In this video, I'll be sharing with you a tutorial on how to cut and sew this stylish Queen Anne neckline basque dress with gathers. So if this is something you like, kindly hit on the subscribe button. So to start, here's the fabric I'll be making this dress for, and I'm actually making it for someone. So I have 2.5 yards of fabric actually. So that is what I was given to, and we'll start by drafting out our pattern. Here's the shoulder to bust, under bust, waist, and I added 7.5 inches for the basque length. I'll mark the person's shoulder divided by 2, which is 16 divided by 2. I have 8. Now add ½ inch to it because that ½ inch is what you're going to use to turn out the shoulder area, and also if you're attaching a sleeve, you can use that. So I came down by 1 inch at this point, and I'll go ahead to mark a basic neckline of 3 inches. I'll go ahead to connect from that point all the way to the neckline. The next step is to go ahead to find my chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, and I'll mark. So after marking what I have there, I'll go ahead to extend it and go ahead to draw out a straight line. So I'm not using my actual measurement, this is for someone. So now I'll go ahead and mark back the shoulder measurement. That is the measurement I have on the shoulder on the chest line, and I will draw a straight line. Now I'll divide what I have at the armhole into 2 equal parts by folding my tape, and I'll come out by ½ inch, place my tape, and I'll mark my bust round circumference divided by 4. Now after marking at this point, I'm going to go ahead to connect from the shoulder to the midpoint, and from the midpoint of the armhole to the round bust circumference divided by 4. Now this dress is a dartless dress. You need to just mark your bust circumference divided by 4 and add your sewing allowance. I'll mark the under bust circumference divided by 4, and I'll also add the sewing allowance. I'm using 2 inches for the sewing allowance. Now go ahead to measure your waist round circumference divided by 4, and you're going to mark. So the waist here I have is 30.5 inches. I'll divide it by 4, then mark, add 2 inches for my sewing allowance. Here I'll mark the hip circumference divided by 4 and add 2 inches to it. The hip I'm working with is hip 40 divided by 4, which gave me 10. So I'm just going to go ahead to connect this all the way from the upper part to the lower part of this dress. Now after doing this, I'll go ahead to cut out my pattern. After cutting out this pattern, what I'll do is to go ahead to place this, and I'll use it to trace out the back pattern of my dress. This will help me to avoid going ahead to draft out my pattern again. So I already marked out a zipper allowance at the front part of my pattern. For zipper allowance, you can use 1.5 or 2 inches, and you go ahead to mark. Now after I'm done marking this, the next step I'll take is just to pin down this pattern, and I will raise up my pattern because at the back the gather started at the waistline, while at the front we have a basque in front of the dress. So I'll just go ahead and cut out the part I don't need at this lower part of my pattern, then raise it up at the waistline. Then from that point I'll trace this out. So remember, this part we're cutting is for the back now. Then I'll go ahead to trace out the other side of this pattern. Then after tracing out, that is when I'll go ahead to start altering this pattern. So now I'll start by marking the neckline. I marked 3.5 inches at first, but I extended it to 4 inches. So from here now I'll come up by 2 inches, right? And I'll go ahead to draw a straight line. Now from this point I'll go ahead to come in by 3 inches, and I'll place my ruler this way to connect. So I'll just go ahead and draw a slight sweetheart neckline. The neckline there is not that deep, so the person I'm making this dress for doesn't want something that is so deep and something that will expose the bust area. So that's why I'm not making it so deep. Now all I'll do is to go ahead to come in by my sewing allowance by the waistline and then extend my basque. So for the basque, I'm using about 7.5 to 8 inches for the basque. If you're not okay with it, if it's too lengthy for you, please go ahead to reduce it for yourself. So what might work for you might not work for another person, depending on your body structure, right? So I'll just go ahead to cut out this part. So when I'm making this dress, I'll be tightening the upper part of the shoulder so that I won't have any gaping towards the lower part of this dress. Let's go ahead and work on this part, that which is the back. So I've marked the zipper allowance. I'll mark the chest line area and draw out a line. So for the back pattern of this dress, the zipper, I'll come in by 1/2 inch to take out the zipper bulge. You can complete or replace this by the side of your pattern when you're cutting out your dress, right? Now I'll come down by 1.5 inches here and I'll go ahead to connect. So for the person I'm making this dress for, she doesn't want an open back, something this open. So I'm just marking this in case for tutorial sake. Let's say you're making yours, this is what the back looks like, right? So here I'll mark 1 inch, I'll mark 4 inches for the width, and the depth of the neckline I'll use 1 inch and connect. So this is how the back is actually, but the person I'm making this dress for doesn't want this back, so she just wants a little opening at the back of this dress. So this is what I'll be going for. I'll just cut out this neckline. So if you're making it originally with the design, you cut out that area. So what I'll do now is just to go ahead to mark a little design at the back, a little keyhole opening at the back, something that is not so open. So I'll just go ahead and cut this out. So after cutting this out, we'll go ahead to place this and transfer on the fabric. Now we're also going to get the lower part of this dress. So for the lower part of this dress, the person I'm making this dress for wants something that is lengthy. So the gown length I'm working with is 43. Now get your shoulder to waistline, right? The shoulder to waistline we used there is 17 inches. Now from this 17 inches, I'm going to now measure the remaining part, which is about 43 inches, the total length. So I'll go ahead to do 43 minus 17, and whatever I have is what I'll use to cut the lower part. So this is the fabric. Let's go ahead to transfer our pattern. So I went ahead to cut this out and I added 1/2 inch all the way around. Remember, we are going to sew up with more than 1/2 inch at this part to tighten the shoulder area of this dress. So now another way is to tighten the neckline to avoid gaping here, so which we did not do, and I'm just going to tighten it up from the shoulder area. So don't add by the side, just at the upper part and the lower part. That is where you'll be adding 1/2 inch to. So I'll unpin my pattern and this is what I have. Then I have cut out the lining together also. I'll spread out my fabric and I'll spread the lining on it. So I'll also go ahead to iron this. That is when I'm sewing it. So what I'll do now is to go ahead to stitch up this part of the dress. So I went ahead to pin it down. I'll be stitching 1/2 inch on the neckline area. So you stitch the armhole area of yours, but for my own pattern, I'm going to attach a sleeve to this dress for my client. So I'll go ahead to stitch up the side of this dress. So here is the back pattern and I've placed it to cut out the lining. I added 1/2 inch at this keyhole side, at the neckline, and also by the side. Then I added at the lower part. So do not add by the zipper and the side of this dress. So now I'm going to stitch up this my dress, and after stitching the front part, what you do is to go ahead to notch the neckline area of this dress. After notching it, you're going to go ahead to flip this all the way to the right side of this dress, and I'll go ahead to iron it out. So after I'm done working on this is what I have, and the next step I'll take is to go ahead to join the back. So I also turned the back and notched it, and I pinned out my zipper allowance. Please go ahead to pin out your zipper allowance. Now I want to join the shoulder of the front to the back. I'll place the back shoulder in between the front and wrap it and sew. When you're stitching on it, at the beginning part, you're going to stitch 0.75 and then slant to 0.5. This is so that we can tighten the shoulder part of this dress very well and it will not gape. So if you're making your own dress, go ahead to stitch up the armhole area inside, right? But I'm going to attach a sleeve to this dress because my client wants a sleeve to the dress. So I'll just go ahead to attach a sleeve to it. But for yours, close up the armhole of the dress. Now after stitching up the shoulder, I went ahead to attach a little belt on it because the dress has a belt. Couldn't make a big belt because of the fabric I had was really little, so I just had 2.5 yards of fabric. Now we're going to shape our dress. I'll just go ahead and I'll pin my dress down first before going ahead to stitch. So I'll place my tape and mark the shoulder to bust, which is 9, shoulder to under bust, which is 12, and the shoulder to waist is 17. So I have similar measurements with this person. So what I'll do now is to go ahead to place my tape at the bust area. So I'll place my tape, and what I have here is about 20.3 inches. Now the person's bust is 35.5 inches. I'll divide what I have into 2 to give me 17.8, roughly 17.8. So what I have on both sides is roughly, I'll now minus that 17.8 from 20.3 inches. Whatever I have remaining, I'll share it into 2 and mark here. Then place my tape, and I'll now mark the 17.8 inches on the other side, right? Place my tape at the under bust. The under bust I have here is 18.5 inches. Now the person's under bust is 30.5 divided by 2. I have roughly 15.3 inches. I'll deduct it from what I have and then share the remaining part into 2. Now I'll repeat the same thing at the waistline because the person's waist and under bust is the same measurement, and I'll mark. After marking, I'll just go ahead to connect, and then I'll go ahead to stitch this up. So this is what I have after I was done stitching. Now what I'm going to do is to bring the remaining part of my dress, that is the part we'll be gathering. So I had to like join the fabric together, 2 sides together, so that I'll have enough fabric. So now find the midpoint, and you're going to have like a gather stitch at this point, which you're going to gather it along the waistline. But since the fabric I'm working with is a bit silky, I'll just split it and sew, because the more I pass thread to drag it, the more it is trying to tear or wear off, right? So I'm just going to pleat it, and I will pleat it and sew around the waistline. So after I was done sewing, this is what I have. What I'll now do next is to go ahead to fold it over this way, and I'll measure about 7 inches, then stitch the lower part, attach zipper at the upper part of the dress. So after I was done stitching, this is what I have. After stitching, this is what I have. And if you notice, I didn't attach a sleeve to this dress because the one on the thumbnail does not have a sleeve, but I'll do that later. And the lower part wasn't that full, so I'm just working with the amount of fabric that was given to me. So this is the final look of this dress. If you have any question, please go ahead to leave it at the comment section.